Because eating healthy is great, but what's not great is guilt, stress, or judgment around our food choices, or if you're feeling restricted or deprived by your nutrition plan, that's not the intent, right? So we want to make sure that even as we're working on health goals, if we're working on performance or improving body comp, that we're still maintaining a healthy relationship with food or building a healthy relationship with food if we don't already have one. And this is something very important to me for many reasons. One, I worked in the eating disorder field for, it's been almost 15 years now, so I've really seen the worst of what can happen when our relationship with food falls apart. And I don't always have the best relationship with food either. I think I know what it feels like to feel guilty or like shame over your food choices, and I'm here to say it doesn't have to be that way. And it's very important to me as well because I have 2 little girls now, and I want to make sure that they have a really good relationship with food and their body. So this is kind of what I've learned over the years as to how to do that. So this is just a brief overview, and then we're going to go into specifics on all of these topics, but key points are letting go of judgment or morality language around food, get rid of food rules, quit the quest for perfect nutrition, honor your hunger and fullness and your cravings, incorporate less nutrient-dense foods in an intentional manner, practice mindful eating, and focus on the process, not the outcomes. So the first one is letting go of judgment around food. So I'm a firm believer of everything in moderation, but going along with that, I think it's really important to stop labeling foods as good or bad. We need to kind of be careful about the terms that we use to describe food and try to view it more in the greater context of things. So I always give water as an example because people automatically think water is good. We need it, right? But you can drink too much water and throw off your electrolytes and it can be deadly, right? So it's not good or bad. It's about having the right amount. And the same thing with foods that we perceive as healthy or good, like kale. You can eat too much kale, right? I know someone who did that and they had blood clotting issues from so much vitamin K. So it's clearly about balance and moderation, but again, viewing it in like the greater context of things. And even with something like sugar, yes, too much can negatively impact your health, but there are situations where it could be appropriate. So the example that I gave is I actually had a stomach bug a few weeks ago and, can't keep very much down. And I had an ice cold Sprite and it was the most amazing thing that I've ever had in my life. Not something I would drink regularly, but in the context of it, it felt like an appropriate decision. But what would that mean if I had Sprite labeled as bad in my mind? Does that mean that I can only have bad foods when I'm sick? Or if you label foods as bad, how does that make you feel, right? When you eat a bad food, does that mean that you're bad for eating a bad food? Or how does it impact your eating the rest of the day? A lot of people will kind of get into the mindset of, well, I ate something bad, then, well, I might as well just be real bad and eat all of it. Or like, this day is already ruined, so I might as well just eat whatever and stop caring. So I think moving away from that languaging can kind of help you not fall into that trap. And also avoiding terms such as clean eating or junk food because they kind of have that judgmental tone to them. So when you talk about eating clean, it sort of implies that there's like dirtiness if you're eating foods that aren't clean. And also clean has no real definition for food labeling. So it's sort of subjective what people are saying is clean. And I think they mean healthy, which I think is an okay term to use. But I think when you use the term clean, how does that make you feel, right? If you're eating foods that are unclean, do you feel unclean? Do you need to go take a shower? Like, it's just not helpful, right? So to kind of be careful of those terms. And the same with junk, it sort of implies that the food was a waste, which I don't think is ever true, because if you feel like you ate junk food or the food you ate was a waste, it can kind of, again, lead to that screw it mentality, like, well, this day is already ruined. And we don't want to do that either. It's important to kind of just keep moving on, even if you ate something that you didn't intend to. There's literally no such thing as an empty calorie. That's not physically possible. All calories have energy that your body can use. And also, I think it's important to stop comparing to what other people are doing or what other people are eating. I always like to say compare and despair, because no one compares and feels good about their choices. Or you've probably heard comparison is the thief of joy. So just be very careful that you're not comparing to what other people are doing. We're all on our own health journeys, and that's okay. And instead of using those labels that I talked about not using, what I like to do is think about food on a spectrum of productivity or nutrient density. So some foods are going to be productive to your goals, and those are the nutrient dense foods, and those should be the basis of your diet. And some foods may not be nutrient dense, but they're still productive to your goals, like sugar during exercise, right? Your body needs that during endurance exercise. And then some foods are just for fun. They're not nutrient dense, but they can be incorporated in an intentional manner if desired without guilt. And we'll talk a little bit about how to do that in a few slides. The next tip is to get rid of food rules. I do not think that having rules are helpful. For one, I think it's human nature to want to break the rules, right? I always talk about the forbidden fruit complex. Like when you sort of tell yourself, I can't have something, it sort of makes you want to have it more. And breaking the rules can kind of lead to guilt, or it can lead to the screw it mindset, right? Like, well, I already broke the rule. I might as well just eat whatever. Today is ruined, which is not helpful. So I really don't recommend, like, don't eliminate food without cause. If you have an allergy or intolerance, that's different, right? If you're working on a health condition, that's different. But don't just say, oh, I'm just not going to eat this food because you're worried about it, because that's an unhelpful food rule. And try to move away from the concept that food is not earned. We don't want to have the concept that food is earned, because that sort of sets up the dynamic that you are only deserving of certain foods under certain conditions. And where this comes up a lot with is like dessert, right? I have to finish my plate, or I have to finish my dinner before I can have dessert. I did have to throw in a Pink Floyd reference here that you don't have to eat your meat before you have any pudding, right? Like, it's not a helpful food rule. You don't have to clean your plate. I think it's okay to kind of let go of those things. And that is something that I even practice at my house with my kids, is they don't have to finish their dinner in order to have dessert, because I don't want them to push past normal hunger fullness cues in order to like earn dessert. And that's what can happen for adults too, is we sort of learn that we have to earn dessert, and that actually makes dessert a good food. And we're not labeling anything in terms of good or bad. So with kids, and this is a whole nother topic, what I do is take a no thank you bite, please at least try it. And then you can say if you like it or not, but they don't have to earn their dessert by eating something else beforehand. Along with this, what I do recommend is focus on what you should eat instead of focusing on what you shouldn't eat. So focus on, what are you trying to do more of? Are you trying to eat more protein? Are you trying to eat more veggies, or to meal plan or prep? I find that when you focus on the positive, it sort of shifts your mindset more to the positive, and you also find that you do less of the other stuff that you're trying to do less of anyway, because you're so busy focusing on the things that you're trying to get in. And also, it's okay to have goals and a plan. A plan is not the same thing as a rule. So to me, a food rule is like, I can't have any dessert, or I can only have one carb at dinner. A plan is more like, what are you intending to do with the food? So I'm planning on having a balanced meal of protein and veggies, as well as a moderate portion of dessert. So I want to be clear that those things are kind of different, and being planful is good. We recommend that for staying on track with nutrition, but rules are usually not helpful. Also, if you are on the quest for perfect nutrition, I'm going to encourage you to quit. One, because there's no such thing, right? Even nutrition experts have no idea, we don't agree on what the perfect nutrition is. And I think this creates added stress if you're not achieving it, because it's a moving target. So I think, we all try to do our best with our nutrition, and that's really all that we ask. The example I give with like the quest for perfect nutrition is, let's say you eat out a lot and you decide, okay, I'm going to make burgers at home instead of going out for fast food. And that's a great step, right? But then you have to look at, like, is your beef lean? Is it grass-fed organic? And that's the next step. But then you got to look at, if you're grilling it, well, you're creating carcinogens when you grill. So do you need to marinate your meat to eliminate that? And you can see how you can drive yourself crazy, right? Like trying to make your nutrition perfect. And so just focusing on like doing your best, taking little steps, but don't try for perfection. Focus on the process. And just to point out that this can get bad for some people. Orthorexia is an obsession with eating foods that are perceived healthy that actually interferes with people's life, because they're so intent on having to eat perfectly that it can have negative health consequences. So if you want to incorporate what I call fun foods, or the less nutrient-dense foods, that is okay, right? Food is a part of our traditions, it's a part of our cultures, and it's okay to incorporate these, but what we want to do is incorporate them in an intentional manner instead of a reactional one. So reactional means I'm overly hungry, I go to the pantry or the fridge and I just eat a ton of chips because I got low blood sugar, I got too hungry, I wasn't planning ahead, and I just ate reactionally. Intentionally is different. That means I know I like chips, so I plan to have a small serving of them on the side of a balanced meal. And so that's how I encourage people to incorporate fun foods. So these would be, like desserts or foods like the chips example that you might really enjoy, but maybe they're not as nutrient dense or as productive to your health goals, that you incorporate them in an intentional manner. And if you are going to have these foods, eat them mindfully, like slow down, savor them. We'll talk a little bit more about mindful eating in a little bit, but this is a good place to practice mindful eating and really have a full experience, because you will feel more satisfied on less if you eat them mindfully. And yeah, fit them into an overall balanced diet. So think about like the bigger context of things. If I know I'm having dessert tonight, I'm going to be more mindful of my sugar intake earlier in the day. But even if I end up eating more sugar than planned, I still continue the day as normal. I don't like skip dinner because I feel like I went over in my calories. You still like you learn from it and you kind of move on. Always pair sweets with a structured meal or snack. We talk a lot about stable blood sugars here in Healthspan, and part of this is if you are going to have something sweet, have it with a structured meal or snack. So have your dessert as a part of dinner. If you want a little piece of chocolate at your snack, have it with like a handful of nuts. That's going to help, one, prevent overeating of the sweet thing, but it's also going to give you more of a stable blood sugar response. I always encourage people to honor their cravings. I think if our body is craving a certain thing, it could be telling us maybe it needs something. So a lot of times when people are craving sugar, it's not getting enough complex carbs earlier in the day. So kind of looking at like, is that why I'm craving sugar? I didn't get complex carbs earlier in the day. But okay to incorporate it versus like white knuckling it or saying that you can't have it, but again, doing it in an intentional manner. And also sometimes you need to remind yourself if you really struggle with this concept, if you want to be able to eat these types of foods and you feel really guilty about it, remind yourself of the value in eating non-nutrient dense foods. And what that means is like, yes, this food isn't necessarily healthy, but why would I eat it anyway? It might be social connection. I want to be able to go out to ice cream with my friends and not feel guilty about it and be able to focus on the friendship and not be worried about the food. Or I want to be able to have pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving. So is there like a value in allowing yourself having these foods on occasion? And then we want to try to manage reactional eating. So like I mentioned in the example before, reactional eating is I get hungry, I go to the kitchen, I just find whatever I can find. Nobody makes good choices or healthy choices, I should say, when they're eating reactionally because our body's sort of in survival mode, right? I'm low blood sugar, I don't feel good, give me quick energy. So one, don't wait until you're overly hungry to eat. You want to kind of pre-plan your meals and snacks and have them ready to go. So maybe it's not fully prepped, but you know, like, okay, this is what I have in the fridge for snack today. This is what I'm taking for lunch today. Make sure that you're eating enough, right? If you're under eating or restricting earlier in the day, that a lot of time can come back as getting overly hungry and overeating later in the day. We always want to eat for stable blood sugars, so getting a good protein source, getting some fiber, some color at all our meals and snacks. And then also take the time to stop and ask yourself, are you truly hungry? Are you maybe thirsty? Are you stressed out? Are you bored? It's come up a lot with clients recently that their brains just get bored. We need a break from work in the afternoon and we reach for food because it gives us a little dopamine hit and it gives our brain a break. But are there other things that you could do to sort of manage the mind boredom versus reaching for food? Also, listening to your hunger and fullness cues. This is a little chart I like to use to sort of get in tap with our hunger and fullness. A lot of people really aren't in touch with it, and I think it's a great tool to be able to recognize when you're hungry and when it's time to eat until you're satisfied, and know when it's time to stop. With this, I will say it does take about 20 minutes for your brain to register that your stomach is full, so I do encourage people to eat slowly, because if you eat a meal very quickly and you're done in 10 minutes, you're not going to know for another 10 minutes like how full you really are, so it's easy to overeat. So kind of slow down and look at the scale. So on the scale, if a 5 is neutral, you're not noticing anything about hunger and fullness. As the numbers go down, you're getting more hungry. You should really be eating when you're about a 3. You're hungry, but it's not uncomfortable. A 2 is like hangry. If you're one of those people that gets grumpy or irritable, your blood sugar is starting to get low, you've kind of waited too long. And that's when I said, like, no one makes good food choices, right? So to kind of eat when you're a 3 and then eat till you're a 7 or an 8. So a 7 is satisfied and 8 is comfortably full. And it's a subtle difference. Satisfied means you satisfied the hunger, but you're not totally full. So you have room for more. You may or may not want more and need more depending on if you're liking what you're having. But that's a good place to stop, especially if you're working on a body comp goal, if you're in a restaurant and you're not really sure how they make it. An 8 is okay, that's comfortably full. A 9 is like Thanksgiving, you've maybe had a little bit more than usual, you're uncomfortably full, but you know that it will pass. And a 10 would be more like overeating or a binge episode where you're physically uncomfortable. So if you're hitting the extremes, we really want to look at like, why are you hitting the extremes? And kind of try to stay between a 3 and an 8. Also, I think it's good to practice mindful eating. Mindful eating is basically paying attention to your food and your body's response while eating without judgments. So, to practice mindful eating, you can't have any distractions. So, no phone, no TV, not working. Really slow down, pay attention to the food. And if you really want to practice mindful eating, I encourage you to actually write down what you notice for all of the five senses. So, what are you tasting, smelling, hearing, seeing? What are the textures you're feeling? And actually write it down. That'll kind of slow you down going through that process. But again, mindful eating can really help you feel satisfied on less, and it's a great tool to eat when you are eating those less nutrient dense or more fun foods. So what do you do when things don't go as planned? I think it's important to remind yourself that one meal, one day doesn't make or break you or your health goals. So don't beat yourself up if you made a choice that maybe wasn't what you originally intended to do. That's why I find Finding Nemo here, like, just keep swimming, right? Just keep going about your day. Pick up where you left off. Don't like restart tomorrow. Don't feel like you have to make up for things not going as planned. I think it can be helpful to sort of reframe your thoughts around like what you might perceive as a failure or things not going as you planned with your food. And instead of letting like guilt or anger or shame kind of derail you, look back at it like a scientist. So kind of think about, okay, what could I do differently next time? I didn't bring a snack with me and I got overly hungry, or I know I didn't get enough protein at lunch and that set me up for snacking all the rest of the afternoon. So kind of just look back on it and learn from it, but certainly don't beat yourself up about it. And I think it's also helpful to focus on the process, not just the outcome. So the process would be like, I'm enjoying trying healthy new meals and trying new things. And the goal is maybe to lower my A1C, but to focus on like the day-to-day stuff that you're doing can be really helpful, as well as focusing on the non-scale victories. So don't just focus on what the scale is doing. Focus on like, how are your energy levels? Do you feel stronger? Are you sleeping better? Do you feel more in control of your food choices? Those are all really important things as well. And then I think also if you struggle with your relationship with food, it's really important to be careful with what you're doing on social media. Who are you getting your nutrition information from, especially on social media platforms? Anybody can have an Instagram account and like spew their nutrition tips, and a lot of them have no science background. So make sure that you are getting your tips from people that have an education in nutrition and actually know what they're talking about, and they're not just talking about their personal experience or they're trying to sell you a product. Really be mindful of who you follow on social media, and really, I think, be wary of people that are the fear mongers, the food shamers, and the unrealistic expectations. I did name a couple names here because these are two people that I think, one, like, even if their information is true, if it's relevant, they're fear mongers. They make you worried about what you're eating, and I don't think that that's helpful. Or they make you feel bad about it. They make you feel like you shouldn't do this, or you're a terrible person if you eat this, or how could you? So being careful about who you're following on social media, so you're not getting these messages that you are good or bad, or doing good or bad things based off your food choices, as well as the unrealistic expectations. We've all seen the like Insta versus reality pictures side by side, that a lot of it's not real, it's altered. And so don't set yourself up for like, well, I really want to look like this person, so I'm going to follow their advice, because we just don't really, that maybe they don't even really look like that. So just be really careful with social media. And then I think if you really struggle with your relationship with food or with your body, it can be helpful to practice body affirmations. So really focusing on, even if you're trying to change your body, it's okay. You can still focus on like, what do you like about your body? And that might have nothing to do with looks, but like, what do you like about yourself? What do you appreciate your body for, right? That maybe you're strong, or it gets you from point A to point B. What does it allow you to do? I literally had an eating disorder client who struggles with body image so much that all she could come up with is that she has opposable thumbs, and that is a benefit of her body, which is true. And that's okay, right? If that's all you can come up with, but really kind of focusing on, what you appreciate about your body can kind of help with that relationship, ties in with our relationship with food as well. So those are all my tips for today. So thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. If you'd like to dive deeper into this topic, Jen is always available for follow-up support. Building a healthy relationship with food is an important part of your long-term health span, and we're here to support you every step of the way. Coming up next, we have Chris Lindley on his masterclass on muscle as the organ of longevity, and our upcoming Healthspan 14er at Mount Sherman, September 13th. Additional event details to come via your email here soon. And as always, the Healthspan and Wellness Retreat from November 1st to the 8th at Surf Synergy in Costa Rica. You can learn more at vailhealth.org/retreat. Thank you so much, and we look forward to having you for the next masterclass.